Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to talk about, does marriage benefit women? And I'm going to make the male version as well. I don't know which one's coming out first, but this was a question that was asked in the comments, and this is a good question. So, overall, I'm just going to summarize for anyone who just watches like the first minute. Overall, research does suggest that marriage does benefit women. However, it's usually under a little bit more specific terms than for men. However, we're going to talk about those things and then we're going to go into much more detail. But first, let's actually clarify, what does it mean for a marriage to benefit somebody, and then what does it not mean, particularly for ladies in this video. So, the areas where we can see that strengthen the benefits of marriage is usually if the particular person, the woman, she finds that the marriage is good quality and she finds it overall satisfying emotionally. So happy marriage, right? Better health. We can see that longer lifespan, okay, and then better life satisfaction. And I'm looking at my notes. If you a lot of you guys ask what I'm looking at my notes. And a lot of you guys think I'm just reading straight off the research. Research doesn't come in like bullet points. That's not how research works. It's very detailed and all this stuff is very tangled in. And so you can't, if I was reading straight off the research, it would be very difficult. And I like to make my points research backed, which is why I read it. I just don't think of it off the top of my head. I could, but I could get some of the facts wrong or the percentages wrong. And so that's why I take notes. The next one is financial advantages. Women who are in marriages tend to have the resources are shared typically among her and her husband, and that makes it beneficial because her resources and his resources, they both add, particularly in the United States, not as common in other countries, but in the United States, two individuals working is more common, or getting more common than it used to be. So this one is beneficial because they both come with financial advantages. The next one is emotional and social support. This reduces loneliness and stress, which can be very beneficial. And there's another part of this that also makes sense from my perspective and what we see in the research. If you're with somebody and they know you very well, they also know your strengths and your weaknesses, which allows you to feel heard and understood without feeling rejected, because someone who's married to you, they know your flaws too, and they still decide to be with you, and that's very beneficial. The next one is where marriage might not be as beneficial. It will likely be conflict-filled marriages or DV, violence, etc. This can obviously harm her mental and physical health. The next one is unequal domestic labor. There are some marriages where women often take household chores and childcare and she's working, and this can be very frustrating. And I know a lot of you guys are going to go in the comment section and say that's not true, that's not common. In the United States, it's not as common, but I also think it's important to recognize that if a lady is feeling this way, she's not going to typically broadcast it. And so you guys, I know a lot of you guys who are men might think this is not happening, but at the same time, you're not a woman who's married, so you might not, I don't know if it's the best idea to try and speak for other people. You guys do that a lot, and that's why I pointed that out, because a lot of you guys say that women feel this way or they do this, and a lot of you guys don't even know, like you don't even, some of you guys have never been in a relationship, and you get this information from like online, like not a real person. And so it's just important to realize that it's likely this is happening somewhere. And it's more common in other countries than the United States that women have a lot more chores, a lot more labor, and the male absolutely doesn't help at all. In the United States, much less common, but it is happening. And I think it's important to recognize that these ladies have validity. The next one is that some marriages, I know people are going to get upset about this too, but some marriages actually don't have economic benefits for ladies if she's married to somebody who, struggles with any sort of addiction, or, comes with a lot of debt, or he spends a lot of money and she's doing a lot of the financial labor. This can also be not so beneficial, and vice versa too, of course. But we're just speaking about ladies today. I'll make the male one another time. You'll see that next. So let's talk about the health benefits. Let's break it up a little bit. Longer life expectancy. Married women often live longer than unmarried, divorced, or even widowed women. And the mechanism that I can attribute to this, is mutual care, shared health monitoring. Like two individuals, they know each other's health well enough that if there's something wrong, the other person can point it out. And then reduce risky behavior is common for both genders. The next one is better physical health in general. So improved physical health might even be a better way to put it. Women who are married often have lower risk of chronic illnesses such as heart disease. And we also see that there is fewer hospitalization and faster recovery from illnesses. So that is absolutely wonderful. I love that one. Mental health benefits, we've talked about this a little bit, but we'll talk about it again in more detail here. Lower levels of depression, anxiety, loneliness when the marriage is supportive, and emotional support often creates a barrier, or I guess a buffer against it. It buffers stress. So against stress from work or life challenges, because there is somebody who is there for you that reminds you about positive things, or somebody that you know is not going to leave you or is going to be there for you. Those things are very nice to feel. Then we had mentioned some of the, I guess I want to say psychological or emotional benefits, life satisfaction and happiness. Married women seem to be happier. They also report being happier, and they have behaviors that, from an observation standpoint, are perceived as more happier. It usually means that they're just more positive in general. They have more hope. They're less negative. They're less hostile, and they admit that they're happy. And some of them even admit that part of the reason is because their marriage is so emotionally satisfying. And so I really like that one. The next one is emotional support. I think a lot of people can assume this one, but having a spouse actually is just a built-in support system for emotional and practical challenges. It also helps women to cope with stress, illness, or even family responsibilities, right? Most healthy marriages, they divide certain things, even if it's not entirely in the same way. Even in long-term relationships, my own relationship, for example, I pretty much predominantly do the cooking, but he does all the outside stuff, the car stuff, all of those. But that works for me. It makes it easier. The next one is reduce loneliness. Individuals who are married, marriage provides companionship. Then we talked about economical and financial benefits, combined household income, access to resources, and economic stability, such as retirement, right? That's a common one, or shared assets. Social and lifestyle benefits, parental support. This is really important. We do see that healthy marriages, married women often have that parental support, whereas a single woman, let's say she's a single parent, she doesn't have that parental support. This one is interesting. I think a lot of people might be upset about this, but this one is something we should clarify on. There's a social status that is seen when people are married or in like a long-term relationship, companionship, but particularly marriage. We can see that marriage increases social networks and social acceptance in some cultures. Less common in the United States, but it does happen, especially if you're in more my state is a little bit more southern, and so I would say that this applies. My significant other is from the Midwest, and that also applies there, but some areas not as much. I know in the North it's not as common. In general, the United States, different areas have different perspectives of social status, but like I was saying, Southern's a little bit more common for, social acceptance of marriage or long-term relationships. And the next one is engagement of healthier behavior. I really, really, really like this one. Probably my favorite point on this, because I feel like this is so true that it reflects, just for me personally, but also as a therapist, just at working with people, I notice this. Married women adopt healthier lifestyles typically. Typically in the mental health space, they are less argumentative. If they have a long-term marriage, they're less aggressive, they're less negative, they're more compliant, and males too. I'm not saying just females. They're more appreciative, and these are very healthy protective factors against mental health. The research is in the description box. I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.